Awareness, the final frontier. These are the explorations of Jonathan Robinson and Brian Tom O'Connor. Their continuing mission, to discover fresh new paths to the mystery within, to seek out new joys and new methods of awakening, to boldly go into the heart of expanded consciousness. This is Awareness Explorers.
Well, welcome back, family, to Awareness Explorers. And if this is your first time, welcome into our club. We're going to be exploring some of the key topics that are about awakening and lead to awakening and have to do with awakening. And my name is Jonathan Robinson, and I'm with my co-host,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
Good to be back. I just got back from a cruise, so I'm all relaxed and enjoying trying to be the background of awareness. So how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great here in New York. It's sunny, and although I haven't been on a cruise, at least not outside, I've been cruising around the inner world of awareness.
Well, that's a good place to cruise around, and we're going to be talking about some new ideas today for what that means and how to do it. So the thing that I've been thinking about and what I want to discuss with you and for our listeners is whether there's a difference between a head awakening and a heart awakening. And if there is, how we can both awaken the heart and the head at the same time, or whether or not we may have to put a different focus on different types of awakening to balance ourselves out. You know, I've noticed in general that people don't talk about heart awakenings that much. You know, we just have the term awakening, like everything becomes fully awakened all at once. And in our last episode, which was What the Heck is Enlightenment, we mentioned how just because you have an awakening doesn't mean that everything becomes balanced, you become all-knowing and all-wise. It just means that you had a certain experience and that you have to grow up as well as wake up. And part of growing up is to become a loving, mature, fully caring human being. And I'm wondering whether you think that that generally happens with awakenings, Brian.
Yes, I think it does, although I often don't talk about awakening because I still think of that as some event that's going to happen in the future. And I think that pure awareness, the background of all experience, is right now, right here. And that's where happiness lives. But that aside, I have heard people talk about head awakening and heart awakening. And I think that one of the possible distinctions is that with head awakening, you understand that you are pure experiencing, that you are universal consciousness, that your awareness is the same as everyone else's. And you understand this from an intellectual level, and sometimes even from a deeper level. And you experience that the awareness that you are is empty. It's nothingness. It's pure potential. And that there's another direction that you can go where you realize that not only is it nothing, but it is also everything, because it includes everything that appears in awareness. In other words, you sense that you're not separate from everything else. There's an intense intimacy with everything that exists. And I think with heart awakening, it's not dry like head awakening can be. It's juicy, and it's about love.
Yeah, so that is a very different thing, when it is more love-oriented, more inclusive, and more emptiness or nothing-oriented. And I liken it to like two wings of a plane. If one wing of a plane is very strong and long, and one wing of a plane is very weak and short, that plane is likely to go around in circles. And I think anytime the so-called head awakening or the so-called heart awakening becomes too strong in comparison to the other, that people have certain problems that they experience. I've seen people who, in a way, are too open and too loving and too everything is part of them, that they have a hard time functioning in the world. And then I've seen people who seem to have some kind of awakening in the head or into this emptiness. And I don't necessarily like them because they seem too devoid of feeling. Can you relate to that?
Yes, I can. But it seems to me that what I've noticed is that people who are really determined to understand it intellectually run into some problems in the feeling area. And part of it is because the mind is not really the correct tool to experience pure awareness. The mind is the organ of separation. Its whole job is to make distinctions between this and that so that it can make decisions in life. And as such, it's incredibly useful and it shouldn't go away and we should use it. But in reality, there aren't distinctions. In reality, or in what I call real reality, as opposed to the virtual reality of our past and future based mind stirrings. In real reality, all is one. And that just can't be grasped by the mind.
So you're saying that real awakening is an entire mind, body, heart phenomena, and it really shouldn't be separated.
Well, I think so. Although I don't make any claims for awakening, all I know is that when I shift my identity from the content of awareness to the pure background, then I'm flooded with love and joy and happiness. So to me, it's all one. To me, there really isn't a distinction between head and heart.
I think, playing devil's advocate with you, my experience is a little bit different than that. I find that I tend to go into the background of awareness or pure awareness mostly through my head at first. Like that's my easiest entry point. And if I can spend more and more moments there, I start to tap into the love and joy aspect. But that's not what I normally tap into right away. I have noticed that other people do the exact opposite. For them, their heart or love or the feeling of oneness is their easiest entry point. And by spending time there, they can then get into more of the, call it head or emptiness aspect of awakening. So I think that different people have different affinities, and that you want to start with your strong suit, but not stop there. You want to continue staying there, and whatever helps you to stay there will then further blossom your awakening into the part that may have been missing or not as prevalent. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a really great point, Jonathan. As a matter of fact, several really great points. One being that everybody is different, and to start with your strong suit is a great idea. And you also have to be the expert on what actually works for you and in relation to your nature and how you are. And the other great point that you make, which I often overlook, is something that we talked about a couple of podcasts ago with the awareness two-step. Sometimes it does take a couple of steps. Like you start with the rational mind. It makes the decision to shift where to look. And then once it does shift, then the connection with universal consciousness floods the individual mind, and the individual mind can then merge with it. So you're right. It can be a two-step process. It can start with a decision in the mind to look inside, and then once inside, a kind of a relaxing and a kind of a marinating and a kind of falling into the background of awareness and falling into those feelings of love and joy, which may not have been present at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you say, some other people may start with the feeling of love, kindness, connection and go from there.
Along these lines, Ram Dass once shared with me a story with his guru. I actually met him or had an encounter with him at the Rainbow Gathering in the middle of nowhere. So we were talking about these things, and he shared this story that he was once complaining to his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, about how the world is so screwed up. And as he became more awakened, he saw how things were screwed up and how much pain there was. So he was having like an awakening in his heart where he felt less separate from people, and it was overwhelming to him. And he didn't know what to do about it. So he's saying, there's people starving in the environment and the this and the that. And his guru says to him, Ram Dass, don't you see that everything is perfect? Everything is exactly how it should be. And, Ram Dass says, yeah, but what about this? And what about the global warming? And what about the people starving here? And his guru goes, no, you don't see it. Everything is completely perfect. Really pointing to the head awakening, the fact that one way of being is that everything is exactly as it is, so it's perfect. And Ram Dass was having a hard time seeing this, but in his guru's presence, he finally got that everything was perfect, and felt at peace. And once he felt that and understood it, his guru says to him, so why don't you go and feed people? Why don't you go help people? People are starving. So it's a hard balance to get. And I notice that whatever your affinity is, people generally can get stuck in that affinity unless they're doing something to help balance out either the head or the heart. So they're in that sweet spot where they are at peace, but also with an open heart that feels connected and is able to serve. And that sweet spot is really, in my opinion, rather rare, but it's something that we all can aspire to.
Yeah, that sweet spot is really what it's all about. And it's very easy to imagine that if what we're trying to do is allow everything to be as it is, to misconstrue that to mean, therefore, we can't take any action. And that's not true, because let's say we have an interest and we see some wrong that we have the ability and the talent to right, or at least to help out in some way. It would be, therefore, a denial of the reality of what's happening right now to say, I must not do that. I have a great story. I imagine, I don't know if I've told this already, the guys walking along the river.
I don't think so.
There's a story about 3 guys walking along the river, and a child falls in and starts to drown. And one guy says, it's God's will that that child fell in the river. Who am I to alter God's will and jump in? And the second guy says, all right, I agree. It's God's will that the child fell in the river, but it's also God's will that it fell in the river inside of an able-bodied adult who can swim. So he jumped in and he saved the child. Now, what about this third guy? The third guy said, oh, this shouldn't have happened. This is absolutely terrible. Where are those person's parents? They should build a guardrail along here. And besides, I'm wearing a very expensive suit that I just bought. And he did nothing. But all he did was rail against what was happening as if it shouldn't be happening. So it was really the middle guy who was in between the two extremes, who hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, and if you're not careful, you can use, quote, awakening, unquote, as a defense to actually being fully engaged in the world. And I see this in people. It's really disgusting. And one of those people I see it in sometimes is known as Jonathan Robinson, and that's particularly disturbing. So it's something like I'm always looking out for, to not use the excuse, well, everything's perfect, everything's happening as it should, to be my reason for not helping the homeless person, or my not giving money to some cause. And I know that as my heart has more opened in the last few years, or last couple of years anyways, that it is a little bit hard to handle. Let me give you a specific example. I used to watch the news, and for me, it was like all, just very interesting. Whatever was happening on the news. And my heart really wasn't engaged, and it was kind of entertaining. Well, in the last couple of years, the news is really hard for me to watch. I mean, like painfully hard.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it's a good sign. That means I'm feeling less separate. I'm more heart oriented. But the immediate quote reward is, some pain that I wasn't experiencing before. But I think of that as a thing not to be avoided, because that is part of having a heart, and it is part of the world.
Yes, having a heart and being part of the world is very important, and so is doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
In my book, Awareness Games, I have a game where you walk around the streets of your city or town and you look at people as they walk by you, and you imagine looking out through their eyes. And when you do that and you compare the imagined looking out through their eyes with the noticing of what's looking out through your eyes, you realize that they are identical. It's almost like a blank screen that sights and sounds get projected on. That blank screen in me is identical to the blank screen in you. And therefore, we're the same. And therefore, why would I not care if you're in pain or if you hurt?
Right. As you're speaking, I thought that that's a great way for people who might be too head oriented or head awakening oriented to perhaps open their heart. And in a way, it's kind of like if you're on a beam, like a 4-inch beam that they use in the Olympics to do all their somersaults, and you're starting to fall to the left, you would, say to someone, or somebody else is falling to the left, you would say to them, lean right. Whereas if they're leaning right, you'd say lean left. So if a person is leaning towards their mind all the time and the emptiness aspect of awakening, my question is, what do you think would help them to have more of this full body heart awakening? And one of the things would be that game where you see that really there's just one of us in drag walking around, so you feel less separate. Sometimes I use a tool called Just Like Me. Mm-hmm. And when I'm judging people, which happened 6 years ago last Tuesday, or in the last 20 seconds, whichever came sooner. When I judge people, I will often get out of my head by saying, well, that's just like me. And that leads to a little bit of a sense of compassion for that person. So it might be something, the president's doing, or my wife is doing, or somebody in the bank line, and I'll see that person, I don't know, talking on their phone loudly while trying to do their bank statement. I'll think, what an idiot. And I'll think, just like me, sometimes I multitask and it generally doesn't go very well, and it doesn't feel good to be so busy. And that helps me to be in my heart. So I've developed some tricks, so to speak, that when I find myself too head oriented, helps me to remember our common connection. And I'm wondering if you've done the same thing for yourself.
I love that just like me technique. I do believe I do that, but never so purposefully or so intentionally or so clearly as you state in that technique. I think it's a really good one. I'm going to use it. Another way I think to get out of the head and into the heart is actually through the body. I met a guy the other day who said that he used to have several incurable diseases and that he got over them through meditation. And I said, well, what kind of meditation do you do? And he said, well, I just simply sit down and relax. And then whenever I start thinking, I just notice my body sensations. And I said, that's it? And he said, yeah, that's it. And it was so simple. Whenever your mind starts spinning, whenever your thoughts are thinking about other thoughts, just drop down below the neck and notice what your body is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because what your body is feeling is right now. And what your mind is thinking is the past or the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. As you get more into your body, you're more embodying your awakening. It's not just a head thing. And part of the embodiment is the heart and the body. So that's a nice, very simple approach. I do something similar where if I notice I'm too much in my head, sometimes I will imagine that my heart has lungs and I'm breathing right into my heart or through the center of my chest. And this helps put the energy of myself more from my head into my heart. And it helps to seemingly open my heart or relax my heart into a feeling of connection that leads to a more full body embodiment of the awakening or the feeling of presence. So I found that to be really helpful because it's really easy. And generally, I'll just do 3 breaths into the middle of my chest, and it just gives roots to the quote head awakening that I may be experiencing in any given moment.
I think that's lovely. I think that's ideal. I think everybody should try it.
Yeah, I stole that one from the Institute of Heart Math. That they're an interesting organization because they are an organization that was founded by a teacher, and their goal was to bring people more into their heart. And interestingly enough, I met with their teacher, a guy named Doc Luke Childre, very wonderful man. And he doesn't generally meet with people, but he had known about my book. So we met. And when we met, I was escorted into a darkened room with literally no light. So, they had to guide me to a chair. And he greets me warmly. Hello, glad to have this opportunity. It was really interesting because I wasn't able to use my eyes, all my other senses kind of awakened, including my heart. And we ended up talking for 6 hours. Finally, I had to, go to sleep. Fascinating man with a great organization. If you don't know about the Institute of Heart Math, they're worth looking up. But they and he have developed all these ways to get this overly intellectual society we live in to be more focused in feeling their heart. And they actually have apps and gizmos to help people to do that, as well as techniques. And one of their techniques is called freeze frame. It's basically where you think of a person or animal that you have great love for, and you open up to a feeling of love or care and just sit in that feeling for a while. And it's a wonderful technique. I use it in my workshops often. And literally in a minute, people can sometimes have, teary-eyedness of remembering the time they were with a baby or a beloved pet or a mate. That was really wonderful. And it's a great way to bring your energy into your heart when that is missing. And that has all kinds of health benefits besides all kinds of life benefits. So there's all these different ways to open up the heart. And I think it's really your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to find what works. And that's one of the methods I've used. And I'm really indebted to them for helping to spread that message.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this whole Awareness Explorers thing that we're doing, is that everybody is different, and some things work for some people and some things work for others, and some things work for one person in the morning and not in the afternoon. So we're exploring lots of different techniques and coming up with them and telling you, the listeners, about them and saying, try them, see for yourself how you feel, what's going on, how they work. And that's a real good one, Jonathan. Thanks.
Yeah. You said something earlier which got me, I smiled because you said that this friend of yours had an incurable disease. And sometimes I will be talking to a workshop that I'm leading. I'll say, hey, I'm a little bit crazy because I kind of gone, really go for it in life because I found out not too long ago that I have an incurable disease. And there's no treatment for it. Basically, everybody who gets this disease has died. And the disease I have is something called life, which currently has a 100% mortality rate. And some of you out there may also have the same disease, which means that we have very limited time to get to the business at hand and to wake up and to really go for it in life. And it's a funny way to remind people, but sometimes we think like this goes on forever, but we're in this form just for a very short period of time. And I think of opening up to awareness as a good way to be prepared for when we transition to some other experience known as death.
Yes, that's a funny metaphor. The incurable disease that we all have. And it doesn't seem there is a cure. There's a treatment, though. And the treatment is living. And the treatment is being the ground of being itself, is being love, which pervades everything.
And to the extent that you can do that in your life, I think that's the absolute best preparation for death and for whatever comes afterwards.
Just be.
Mm-hmm. So, Brian, I hear that you have a guided meditation for helping people either awaken their heart or balance it out. And I'd be interested in having you guide us in what that is and maybe any comments you have about it.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely do. And actually, I think I'll skip the comments and just dive right into it.
Okay.
So first thing, as always, is just to get comfortable. Take a moment to relax, scan your body and see if there's any clutching or holding, and just take a couple of easy, deep breaths and let it go. This is a meditation of imagination. You don't have to believe anything. You just have to imagine it, only for the duration of the meditation. Before you close your eyes, look around and notice your eyes as a sense organ. In other words, light and images are coming into your eyes and through them into your awareness. Just notice that what you see is appearing in awareness. Now, close your eyes and notice your hearing. Notice your ears as a sense organ. In other words, sounds are coming into your ears and through them into awareness. Just notice that what you hear is appearing in awareness. Now notice the thoughts that are coming into your mind. Notice your mind as a sense organ. In other words, thoughts come into your mind and through it into awareness. Just notice that your thoughts appear in awareness. Now ask yourself, where is this awareness in which sights, sounds, and thoughts appear? Since the eyes are in the head and the ears are in the head, and thoughts seem to be in the brain, if you're like most people, you'll answer, in my head. If so, just notice or imagine awareness inside your head. Now, in your imagination, drop down from the head to below the neck. Notice the sensations on your skin. Perhaps there's a breeze, or you can feel your shoes or the floor. Or with your hands, you can feel the chair or the table. Notice your skin as a sense organ. In other words, sensations come through your skin and appear in awareness. Notice any other bodily sensations that are appearing right now, and notice the awareness in which they appear. Then ask, what if the heart was a sensory organ? What is appearing in it? What if everything that is appearing in all the other sensory organs is appearing in the heart? What if the heart was totally okay with everything that it experiences? With everything that appears in it? With everything that could ever appear in it? Imagine that your heart reflects everything that appears without choice, without exclusion. Imagine that it allows everything to be just as it is. Just for now. You can go back to excluding or not allowing later, if you want to. So just for now, imagine that your heart allows everything to be just as it is. Imagine that this allowing of everything to be just as it is the definition of love itself. Imagine your heart is love itself. Imagine your heart is you. You are love. What if the entire body appeared inside the heart? Imagine your heart expanding with love and allowing. Imagine your heart expanding to fill your entire chest. Imagine your heart expanding to fill your entire torso. Imagine your heart expanding outside of the boundaries of your chest and torso. Imagine your heart expanding so that it includes your entire body. Imagine your heart loves your body and allows it to be exactly as it is. Imagine your heart expanding to fill the entire room. Imagine your heart expanding to include everyone you know and love. Imagine your heart expanding to include everybody you don't know or don't love. Just for now, imagine that everything in the world is so close to you, so intimate with you, that the boundary between you and everything in the world starts to dissolve. Imagine you are your heart. You are pure awareness. You are love. You are everything. And now, stop imagining anything and just simply notice what's present right now. And when you're ready, at your own pace, slowly open your eyes and we'll rejoin Jonathan.
That was intense, Brian. It actually, there were parts of that that brought up fear in me because I was like entering into a heart that was so open that, it brought up some fear, like, can I be this open?
Mm-hmm.
But I would take a deep breath and get used to it and, realize I was okay. But definitely moved the energy from my head to this more expanded being that was fully open in love. And that was very powerful.
Good, I'm glad. I hope that fear did resolve itself as it went along.
I think that's one reason why people close down their heart is the initial opening can feel a little overwhelming. Like, can I handle the amount of pain in the world?
Right.
But as I relaxed into it, I was able to do that. And I think it's a good reminder that if you can relax with a feeling, the overwhelming or defensive reaction to it dissolves, and what's left is a more expanded you.
That's absolutely right. And that's a really great tip. When a feeling that you may not want comes in, you have two choices. One is to sort of clutch or tighten against it. And then the feeling rattles around and spins around and knocks against the walls and sticks around. The other is to just relax, let it come. And then the feeling comes in one side, moves on out the other, and it's gone.
Yeah. Well, that's a I think a wrap, I want to remind people that, please tell your friends and family about this. And we love reviews and all that. And to practice this stuff, to see where your energy is. Is it more into the head or more into the heart? And work to balance yourself out. If it's more in the head, try some of these methods that we talked about today to create a more full body and full embodied awakening, and see what that feels like, and see if it seems like the right way for you to move. And if so, then keep going with it and keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Till next time, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app. And we'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.